Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. And as I mentioned, Sharon's here, Kyle's here, I'm here, Tom's here, Kevin's here. We're waiting for Bob, Liz is here, and Dick is here. And we have two guests. Henning is here and Alexandria. So thank you for the great minutes. Bob's here, great. Thank you for the great minutes, Sharon. Did anyone have any comments about those? Okay. I had originally thought about sending out something to everyone to kind of get the flow going in terms of areas that I thought would be important to consider. But then I decided that I didn't really want to have this discussion be about what I thought. And I think it's better for it to be kind of free flowing, keeping in mind that at the last meeting, what we talked about was what are the functions and the mandate of this department? What are they and what are they not? And I think it'd be great if we could all talk amongst ourselves about that. And then if we have time, begin to think about and discuss the clear parameters of the mission and the vision that are going to be guided, the core values of the office. We're going to take the public comment towards the end of the meeting. So I hope that works for everybody. So shall we go ahead and begin our discussion about the role of the climate commissioner and the department and kind of let it go? Yes, Dick. You have to unmute yourself, Dick. There you go. I think you're unmuted now. No, you're muted still. Do I have to unmute you? Let me see.
I said I was unmuted.
There, now you're unmuted. Yeah,
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Been having technical problems all morning.
No worries.
For me, the big issue, and the one I wish we would try to tackle first, is what do we envision as the relationship between this office and the council? You know, what's the authority? How do they interact? In my opinion, we cannot create an office with so much independent authority that it potentially can be in conflict with the council all the time. I don't know how to structure it. I don't have answers, but I think that's the fundamental question.
Okay, and I think a few of us have been giving some thought to that. Bob, did you want to go ahead?
Yes, I've been giving can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been giving a great deal of thought to this. And as you know, I had made a proposal which flew in the face of what Dick just set out, and it was roundly rejected. And I've given some thought to the fact that that's not what people want. And I have another proposal. Unfortunately, I was going to email it to you all for you to take a look at it, but I haven't had the opportunity to. I got it right here printed out, and I can tell you what it does. At the appropriate opportunity, it'd probably take me about 2 or 3 minutes to read it. Would it be appropriate for me to read it to you all now?
Well, sure. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, I'll do this as quickly as possible. And I don't mean to take up an inordinate amount of time.
And you can also email it to all of us.
And I will do that. But what it says is proposal for a climate and environmental advocate. Number 1, create an office of climate and environmental advocacy. Number 2, create an elected position of climate and environmental advocate. This person would need to be elected because the advocate must report to the voters rather than to other people with competing agendas. Number 3, the climate and environmental advocate would have the following duties and responsibilities, and there's several of them listed. I'll read them to you.
Okay.
To produce an annual report on what the county is doing regarding combating and otherwise dealing with climate change, to produce an annual report on what the county is doing to protect the rights of nature as those rights are set out in the Home Rule Charter's new Bill of Rights. C, to properly publicize and distribute these reports. D, to suggest to the county council and to the public ordinances which would combat and otherwise deal with climate change. That's suggest. E, to suggest to the county council and to the public ordinances which would protect the rights of nature, as those rights are set out in the Charter's new Bill of Rights. F, to review all ordinances considered for adoption by the County Council, and in appropriate cases to comment publicly and to the Council on the advisability of any ordinance which would impact climate change or the rights of nature, either favorably or unfavorably. G, to receive and react to public comment regarding any subject within the advocate's purview. H, to keep abreast of actions by other local governments regarding the combating of climate change and the protection of the rights of nature. And finally, I, to seek additional alternative funding for the office in order to expand its activities and to maximize its effectiveness.
Okay,
And I will send that out to everyone
great.
to see if there's any interest in what I've set out there.
So Dick, what I heard there was someone that would be providing ordinances to the San Juan County Council to review and possibly, pass, as well as, going across, crosswalking across departments and responding to those kinds of things. So there's a little bit of a taste of the relationship, kind of a little bit of a backstop for them. When I think of the relationship between the San Juan County Council and this position, I think of it as someone who is really going to help them because they've got all these other priorities, and this person's focus is going to be on climate, the environment, sustainability, resiliency. And so they're going to have that up there all the time, kind of coming back to them and saying, here's an idea, here's what we need to do, and then in addition to that, creating the legislative piece for them and doing the homework to get that done. The county council is going to be involved in that part of the budget that is funding this program. Other thoughts, comments?
What? No one has any thoughts?
Well, I think Liz has something and then Kevin. So let's go like that.
This is kind of at a higher level of the impact of what we're proposing, the reality, the conflicting realities that we're trying to operate under. So one reality, kind of sends up this flag that says, hey, we can do what we need to do to care for the environment without really impacting our lifestyles that much. We can hang on to what gives us the life and the privileges that we have, but we can then tag on this kind of awareness that, oh yeah, we need to be mindful of the natural world. And then the completely, I don't know if opposing is the right word I want to use, but another reality is that we simply cannot do right by the natural environment without making significant personal and collective changes to how we consume, how we, move through the environment. So, I just wanted to put that out there, that they're very different. And it's just the evolution of where we are, of like coming to the reality of a like if any of us discovered we had a life-limiting ailment, there's a period of time where you're still pushing of going, oh, I can do this or I can do that. And then there's the gradual realization of, no, I don't have the capacity. I cannot continue on in the way I used to. My body won't sustain it. It won't, enable me to do that anymore. And I think, at least for me, what we're attempting to promote is the latter. We're attempting to promote that we're pointing towards significant personal and collective change in order to preserve and allow the natural world to flourish.
So what I hear you saying there is there's a role for this office and this individual in public education, outreach, and using our different community groups to kind of help move our whole island community forward.
Yes, Emery, that and the enforcement element of it, to, basically say, again, to use the body metaphor, if we have an ailment and we push our body, it is going to enforce limitations. So
Okay.
the enforcement element is important, and to let people know that this is we cannot mess around any longer. And the illusion that we can sustain a rural character, preserve the natural beauty, and continue on
Mhm.
without significant changes is what I'm pointing to, is to stand up front with that, and not, keep trying to pretend we can do both.
Kevin, you want to take a moment or so?
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. Where I have been spending my time, and I'm hoping to get Jay Manning or Maya Bellin, or more likely Dennis McLaren, to speak to either this group or the full commission, actually, too. Where I've been spending my time is researching how we can strengthen the position. So to Dick's question, there needs to be a very clearly defined, but also really positive relationship structured by us between this position and the council, but also the PA's office and the other elected officials, department heads, and so on. And I think one of the ways that we do that best is we're prescriptive in what what the elected official and the department's functions are and what they are not. And I believe, in my preliminary research at least, that there's ways to strengthen this position beyond them just doing reports and writing ordinances that they hope that the county council will pass. There's many things, as we've discussed, that are statutorily or constitutionally mandated to the legislative body, so our county council. There are, however, areas where we potentially, I'm not sure yet, but it looks like it, we could give authority directly to this elected office. And one of the areas that's really interesting right now is the relationship between this Bill of Rights we're talking about and this position. And in a discussion that Anne Marie and I and some others were on yesterday, somebody brought up, the position that, for instance, Hillary France, the Commissioner of Public Lands, is in, and what authority she has. And some of her authority is in state statute to that position. Some of that authority, however, is her enforcing existing laws. And so if our Bill of Rights were to put in place protections for the environment, or for addressing different climate impacts and so on, and we gave that authority to this position, they would have strength in their position and autonomy in their position to act upon and actually make decisions on some of these issues. So there's still a lot of unanswered questions there, but that's what I'm really pursuing, is everything that's been said with regard to what's the relationship to the council, an annual audit, frankly, an annual report card, putting forward an action agenda of what the county needs to do, but then specifically giving them power, giving them authority to actually move on some of these things on their own.
Yes, Bob.
This is a great discussion. I appreciate what Kevin just said. I'll say this, it's a little frustrating to me because my first proposal was one that gave a great deal of authority and power to this advocate. And I was all for that, although it was a little out there, and the veto power and all of that business. And that got roundly rejected by the group, and they said, no, we don't want this person to have that kind of power. And now I've suggested something that where the person doesn't have that much power, but kind of advises and says, how about this, council? And I'm hearing, no, we want more power for the person. So I think if we can discuss this more, so we can get an idea of whether we want the person to be powerful or not.
Okay, and just so we're all on the same page. I think what Dick has said and what all of us are saying is we want to have a good relationship with our other elected officials and the other appointed officials. We're not looking to have this be, a fisticuff bullying kind of situation. So Sharon, you want to say something? And then Kevin, and then Dick.
Yeah, just want to say, Bob, I hear your frustration. I totally understand it. I think what's happening is that we're in a process, and as we discuss things, there are going to be shifts, in how we're feeling about what we can and can't do. And, we're in the process of trying to figure out a balance between a really positive working together relationship and a somewhat adversarial relationship, which is a necessary aspect of it. So, I think that's just where we are kind of navigating our way through that.
Okay, let's hear from Kevin and then Dick and then back to Bob. Does that sound good? Okay.
I just wanted to respond, Bob, to what you were just saying. I actually really appreciated your first proposal. There were a couple pieces in there that constitutionally aren't possible, and one of which is veto authority. The actions that are assigned via our state constitution, and this, or by state statute to the legislative body, we don't have the ability as a county. We're already preempted by the state and federal government on this. So there's some areas where we can create any position we want, but they will only have authority in the areas where the county has the ability to give them authority. And so vetoing the county council's actions is one area where, if those actions are explicitly granted to the to the legislative body, we don't have the ability to trump that. That was my only issue with your first proposal. Taking a step back, your first proposal, I really appreciated it, and I really wanted to go that direction. And that's still kind of a guiding light for me. It's just the pieces of it, we can't get there using that means.
Gotcha. That's great.
So we're going to hear from Dick and then back to Bob.
Kevin just said kind of what I wanted to say to Bob, is that the Constitution and state law give sole authority for public health, safety, and general welfare to the council. So we can't step on those. But what I'm trying to get to is each of the other elected officials has independent authority in a specific area. They have things they can do that the council can't touch. It's their independent authority. And for me, that's the question. What are the kinds of things we want to give to this position as its independent authority? And I think, as other people have said, it's critical that we not set this up so it just slides right into an adversarial relationship. Because if the council and or other elected officials don't like this office, don't like what's going on in it, nothing will happen. It'll just be constant conflict. So we really have to think about what authority do we give to this that moves the climate issues forward and basically causes the council to have to look at these things.
Why don't you go ahead, Bob, and then I wanted to say something after you're finished.
I'm gonna stop for a while because this is such a great discussion. I like everything that I'm hearing. So
okay, so in my conversation with actually Barbara Rosencotter, who spoke with us last week, she sent me the February 2008 resolution. And then 18 years later, in June of 2020, we had another resolution to deal with climate issues. And here we are 19 years later. It seems to me, in a very broad scale, that we need to look at energy. We need to look at transportation, emissions, electric transportation. We need to look at buildings. We need to look at the natural environment, clean water, sea level rise, and then the area of waste and plastics and green waste. Those were just some of the big ones that I thought of. I actually drilled into a lot of minutia, and I don't know if that's something that a position like this could be involved in. So I was just going to put that out there. Henning, just as a note, we need to take you in the public comment section because this is our only opportunity to really have a discussion like this amongst ourselves. So if that works for you, that'd be great. Okay, go ahead, Bob.
Madam Chair, that was a wonderful list. I think those things all belong in the Bill of Rights, and the advocate needs to be empowered to some degree, to whatever degree this group thinks is appropriate, enforce or urge the enforcement of those Bill of Rights. It's coming together really well, the way those things will mesh. I think where we are now is a place where we're trying to find the right way to give the advocate as much power and as much authority as we can without running afoul of the Constitution and other laws. For example, the direct veto power of the council. I see what you guys are saying, and we can't have that. But there are some things maybe in that original proposal and what other people have in their brains right now about what this advocate can do that we need to get at, because I'm excited where this is going.
So Dick, yeah.
Well, just as a response to what Bob just said, it's fine, in my opinion, to put that stuff in the Bill of Rights, but that's not enough. In whatever section we propose in creating this position, the specific authorities and duties of that position need to be spelled out in that section. So it's very clear. I don't want us to create a situation where we just say, oh yeah, well, this person looks at the Bill of Rights and that's his or her responsibility. That's not going to be good enough. We need to be very clear. I think the other thing that's really important to consider here, if we aren't crystal clear about what this position is and what authority it has, the voters will not approve it.
Okay. And Kyle had posed a question and he was asking if anyone's submission of an example of this success anywhere in the country. So do you want to speak a little bit more about that? And then Tom had his hand up.
It just seems to me, I'm thinking as people talk, that eventually, since it's clear this is the direction we're headed, that we build a worksheet where we sort of line out what endpoint, to Dick's point, what kind of end product or endpoint we want and how you achieve that. That would be an equally fascinating conversation. But I haven't been able to find an example. I haven't looked that hard, but I wonder if anyone's seen an example anywhere in the States, or anywhere for that matter, at this level of government where there's a person or a small department that's having success. Because I'm excited about kind of forging that path, but appreciating how technically challenging. Listening to Bill Apple on another committee talk about how to achieve that legally is, I'll stop talking. Fascinating.
Kevin, did you want to say something? I think you're muted. You unmute yourself.
Hey, Tom had his hand up. I can wait for Tom to go.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't mean to do that.
I think it's interesting to ponder which branch of government this position would be in. Would it be in the legislative or would it be in the executive? And granted, with our county council form, it's a little bit hazy because they wear both hats. But if this position can merely propose legislation, for example, the way the US president can propose to the Congress, he can be told to get lost. We don't like your idea. And so you're talking about some other sort of level of authority that's going to be interesting for me to hear about. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin, were you next? Yeah.
Yeah, and that actually, Tom, you just raised the same question I've been pondering, frankly, and researching quite a bit. So, and this, I raised my hand specifically to the comment that was made earlier about the relationship. I think the greatest service we can do to the future of San Juan County is be extremely prescriptive and detailed in our description of the elected positions authority and the department's authority. I'm looking at doing solar on my house, and I'm probably going to hire a friend's company to do it. And we were going over that, and both of us were very clear that we want the contract to be very clear, because friendship is friendship and business is business. And for the same reason, we need there to be a wonderful relationship between the county council and this position, and a really supportive. I hope that, and I believe that if we're successful, the county council will, maybe not immediately, but eventually see this position as someone who's really supportive to their work and helping them strengthen their goals and vision. That said, the way we get there is we describe in great detail what the position is and what it isn't. And so some of that is reflective upon the Bill of Rights, but as Dick said, it also needs to be directly within the section that talks about this elected official and the department that they oversee. And Tom, I don't have specific answers for you on what authority we can grant them yet. I've got much brighter legal minds researching that and looking into that. And I think we're going to have some answers in the near term of what this position can do and what it can't.
Okay, Sharon, and then Bob, and then Dick.
Yeah, I just feel a need to say at this point that, we just to remember that we are elected to do a job, and that we are not enforcing this. We are not imposing this on the county, that this is going to be voted on by the county. So the majority voice of the county will be heard on it. It does behoove us to be as clear and as strong as we can be.
And then Bob, and then Dick.
Yes, this is really a great discussion. We are given, from what I understand, a certain breadth of legislative authority, which we, the county, can exercise in the way that we want to exercise it. Things that lie outside of that, we can't touch, because they're already covered by other constitutions and senior statutes. So we are given this breadth of what we can do and not do. And yet, I mean, I believe that the charter allows us to give that legislative authority to whatever group we want to give it to, does it not? Can we not take the breadth of that authority, carve out this much over here, which is all matters having to do with climate change and the rights of nature, carve that out over there and give that legislative authority to like an adjunct to the council, which would be the climate guy, person, gal, dude, whatever. And that person would have that authority. Is that something that, I mean, I've not heard of that being done anywhere, but you see what the concept is then.
Right.
It's an adjunct to the council, and kind of like an additional councilman who has been given that specific authority. Alice, you take care of this. And that, is that idea viable, or is it completely, it doesn't work constitutionally and legally?
Liz, you had your hand up, and then Dick had his up. Are you wanting to?
I'll pass. I'm good.
Okay. Dick, did you want to answer that question?
Not that question. I wanted to respond or add on to something Kevin said, and in the form of a quick story. When I was planning director in this county, the second time, it was while the Growth Management Act development was going on in the legislature. And I was also president of the State Planning Directors Association. And that gave me an ex officio seat at the table when the State Association of Counties Board of Directors would meet. And I was sitting in a meeting with them, and growth management was a really contentious issue. And it took up half the day. And that afternoon, after sessions were over, I was sitting with 3 or 4 commissioners, and we were talking about it. And one of them, in the course of the conversation, he was a guy I really respected. He was a Yakima County commissioner. And he said, he said, what everybody needs to understand is, he said, when you're sitting there as a commissioner, you want one of two things. He said, give me control or give me cover. And I never forgot that, because I thought that is really what it's about when you're sitting in that chair. And I think one of the things we should keep in mind is the authority we give to this position can give the council cover. Because if this position is pushing for certain things, that person can be the person who's out front, who's the lightning rod, and then things move to the council. So I think that's a way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. And it reminded me of what Ron Sims said about how he didn't want the tax assessor under him because he didn't want to have to deal with that issue. So Liz, should we come back to you? Tom, you also had your hand up. Did I?
No,
see-
I just thought what Dick just said was fascinating, and I was thinking about the person that would be able to fill that role. But no, Tom, over to you.
Well, I was just fascinated with the idea of having, in our case, one of the three council who are elected countywide have some additional responsibility. And the public would be able to elect which one they want to have that additional environmental responsibility. Now, the reality is, how could that person possibly keep track of all the environmental responsibility and the zillion other issues that come before the county council? So maybe you increase the council size to include this person, but then we get to 4, which is problematic. So just thinking about this.
Well, and I don't know if, oh, Kevin, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to go on the record that I am not in favor of having this position be part of the council or expanding an individual member of the council. I have been thinking about this all along as a separate, independently elected official. And one of the reasons I'm most excited about that is you would have an independently elected official whose sole purpose, think about these issues, not everything else that the council has to deal with. I think that's the strength in this position. So by no means, I think all 3 of the council members, and I'm still supportive of only 3, need to be equal in job description, authority, and mandate.
Okay. And I don't know if we can carve out a section of legislative responsibility for one person. And I really appreciate what Dick said about giving them cover. And that's kind of what I was thinking was, not only do they not have to take the heat like they had to do in the critical area ordinance and some of these other tough issues, they get to celebrate and claim the victories when we're moving forward on these action items. Anybody have another thought they'd like to share? Kevin.
Sorry, I was actually, my original comment before I wanted to respond to Tom was responding to Dick. I have believed, and with firsthand knowledge for a long time, that I don't care if you're the president of the United States or a county commissioner, elected officials need 2 things to do the right thing. And it's very close to what you said, that commissioner shared with you, but I believe it's a little different. It's political cover and political pressure. They need 100 people to come in and say, oh my God, if you do this, I'm going to love you. This is amazing. Please do this. They need those same 100 people to come in and scream and yell if you don't do it. And you've got to have the combination. You can't have one or the other. You've got to have both. You've got to have the pressure, knowing that you need to do what's right, but you've got to have the cover to allow you to do what's right. And I think this position definitely puts us in a place where we would have both significantly increased in our county to do these actions.
And I like to think of it as there being a backbone for this whole department and this position. And that is a community advisory group that may be made up of people that are on an advisory committee related to soil and agriculture, and also people like from Friends of the San Juans, Preservation Trust, and Building Advisory Committee, and that becomes part of the backbone and kind of the education outreach part that the position holds, so that there is a built-in group of individuals from diverse areas that are supportive of what's happening. Bob, and then Liz.
I think one place where we obviously are is we have to make a decision whether or not we want the person in this position to have, if it's possible for the person to have this, any legislative authority. If the answer is no, and all legislative authority has to remain in the council, then I think that talking about them being buddy-buddy with the council at all times, and that's just what the relationship is maybe a little disingenuous. Because I think that a person who's pushing these issues, which are issues that the county council has not previously, from what I understand, shown any particular interest in beyond just resolutions, right? Which my favorite chairman says, resolutions are for celebrating somebody's birthday, right? So they don't get very far. So we have to decide whether or not that person, we want to somehow seek legislative authority for that person. And if the answer is no, we have to be prepared for that person to go to the public and to go to the council and say, hey, don't do this, or you need to do this. And then go to the public and say, they're not doing this. Look, they're not doing this, and they need to do this. Let's get alive, public, and make them do this. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. Does the person have any independent authority to change things or not?
So Liz, and then Kevin.
I was thinking how exciting it would be for this position to really be mindful and tracking what our numerous community groups on the islands are doing. And so to help unite that, empower it, inform the general public about that. There are a lot of groups on our islands who are taking very proactive steps to try and get to where this position would be heading. So I just wanted to get that up in the records that would be, I think that would be something the community as a whole would be excited about.
No, I agree. It would really, I think, empower those community groups as well, and they would be thinking bigger in terms of what we can actually master here. One of the things that I've always thought was, this needs to be a big deal. This needs to be a big deal. And I'm not afraid to be the first in the country to have an elected official in our county that does this work, because I think that the time is right. I think that we, like you were saying, Liz, the people are there.
And
Kevin,
Henry,
yeah,
I just wanted to finish, if I could, of that list you read early on, the transition organizations that pretty much check are all issues that they're working towards in their fossil free by 33 initiative. So,
and those are, I didn't just create those
Right.
came from those 2008 resolution and the 2018 resolution,
Yeah.
So it's like, guys, we got it. Okay, Kevin, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a couple points. One is to Liz's most recent point. I love the idea of this position. Maybe coordinating is too strong, but really paying attention to the linkages between all actions inside and outside of government and how they support one another or potentially conflict with one another. And so paying attention to that. The other thing is, I believe the position could do at the very least a review, and this has been said, of all county actions and ordinances and how they are positive or negative for climate action. And at the most, be able to pull back some of those. So not a veto on an ordinance, but be able to have a, basically as an independently elected official coming in and saying, you're in violation of the law if you do this, or you're in violation of our comprehensive plan, or whatever it may be, the Bill of Rights, whatever it may be. And I will say that actually has quite a bit of strength. And I will tell you, just because you're an elected official, saying that to another elected official holds weight. And it also, importantly, and Anne-Marie and I talked about this, has legal precedent too. And an example of this, which has nothing to do with climate, was Gene Knapp, when I was on the county council with him. I remember that Randy and others were very nervous because Gene was saying, I think it's crazy that we're advertising that people should come and cycle here because our roads are so unsafe. And by doing so, we are making the county liable. And there was an immediate concern that just because a sitting county council person was saying, this makes us liable, that whether or not it was, by him saying it, now we are making ourselves liable. And so the same holds true if an independently elected climate commissioner comes in and says, look, you're in violation of the Shoreline Management Act, or you're in violation of this. It raises those questions. The last thing I wanted to say is the budget, whether we like it or not, money dictates the priorities of government. And the budget, both the transportation budget, the general operating budget, and other resources in the county dictate a lot of our actions, both positive and or negative, for climate action and the environment. It would be very interesting to see if we can create statutory authority through the county charter to give this person an ability to work on the budget and be heard on the budget. So they don't have an ability to veto the final budget, but they're part of the budget team with Eileen and the county manager to make sure that they're reviewing the budget actions that are important with regard to these topics.
Yes, Liz.
Two things. One, to Kyle's earlier point, has someone began to capture and put those recommendations, like Kevin just gave some great recommendations for that position. Have we started a spreadsheet yet? Is someone on that? So Bob's acknowledging yes, because I think it's critical we capture those. The other was, I just simply wanted to introduce the term to magnify. So in terms of that position, absolutely not coordinating the community groups. I don't think that would be appropriate, but to magnify, that their responsibility would be to help, inform and magnify the general public about the work of our community groups.
So I'm at a place, oh, Kyle, go ahead.
I just looking around at trying to answer my own question about, Hawaii and Boulder and some of the other places that have addressed this a lot. It seems like a quick view, a number of those places have developed an office without a specific effort toward an elected or a department head. To what Kevin just said, I think he sort of reinforces his own earlier point. I see friction as healthy to some extent in this conversation. So there won't, when I think about who this person might be and what the dynamics are of the current sort of government picture, it fits, wherein after another election it might not fit. But some of that friction is healthy. And some of that friction, to me, reinforces the idea of Kevin's sort of prescriptive, really drilled down, if the structure of this position down the road is that much more specific, than some of those safety valves and some of those kind of pathways can be really well organized. And I'd like to see us do that work. So at some point in the future, I want us to continue to hear from other people, especially the brighter legal minds, which part I'd like to hear early, which parts we can really pursue under law and which we can't. But to the sort of the spreadsheet idea, I think I'd like to see us pursue that sooner than later.
Right.
And so we figure out where those friction points are and where they're positives. We're very, just in doing this, in this work and making a suggestion that this could be an elected person and maybe one of the first of its kind. That's very exciting, and that is, I really want to see us move forward on that, and I think we can do an even better job by detailing some of that stuff out.
Yes, and to get to your, kind of part of your question, if you look at these positions, almost all of them are coming out of cities, and they are an office that the city has created. And they do have measurements and things like that. But once again, you're going back to the city council or the mayor or somebody else who is weighing down on that decision against a lot of other priorities. So we know that our county council has health, safety, housing, just a host of issues that they're confronting every day. And what we've talked about in the past is how do you make it the priority? Because we haven't moved the dime in 19 years. So that's kind of, and one of the other things I kind of learned from Kevin when we talked about these different locations, like why a city here, why a city there, is that cities have certain different financial activities that they can engage in than counties do. And I don't know if, Kevin, you want to talk about that a little bit more here in terms of taxes and things like that, because an awful lot of times what I've seen in the literature is that the county or the city has created a funding base for this based on this. And some of those issues, I think, will drive us to rate increases like the article that Dick gave us last week, where we have income inequality occurring on the utility side of the equation. So we want to keep that kind of out there at the same time. Okay, so we've got Kevin and we've got Bob.
Yeah, a couple points. And Kyle, I meant to say this earlier when you brought up your question, so sorry for the delay. I think Honolulu is probably the best example out there, not necessarily the best, but it's the closest to what we're talking about. But theirs is appointed. In my back and forth with the director of that department, I believe, and we are yet to have the longer conversation because they were moving their entire office and got delayed. But there's still they still will end up hitting a roadblock. They've done their annual climate audit. They come out with their recommendations. They go to the city council and the city council says, well, I've got homelessness issues and I can't deal with that right now. And so the same roadblocks that we're talking about exist there, but I think that the mandate of that department seems to be close to what we're looking at. The other issue, though, that Anne Marie just touched upon, which is very important here in Washington State, is counties, as you're probably aware, are actually an arm of the state government, technically, the way it breaks down, whereas cities are an independent government entity. Cities in Washington State under the Constitution and in case law have much more authority or more authority than counties do. And it's not just in the financing, it's in the policies they're able to adopt and so on. And some of that has been granted through statute and some of that is in the Constitution through their authority that exists there. But we are limited. And it's part of the reason why, like Bob's points earlier, some stuff in the Constitution to county governments is very clearly mandated to the legislative body and not others. And then the county prosecuting attorney and the courts, the reason we can't mess with them, to put it in a casual way, with the charter is because they are, that's very clearly defined as a state entity, those offices. So I think we need to be responsible in doing our homework and make sure that we understand what we can put forward. And some of that will be advice that Randy and his team can give us. Some of that will be research we'll do on our own. But we just need to be clear that we're aware of what the authority can be and then push it as far as we want to.
Bob, you want to say something?
Yes, please. If it comes down, if we're coming to the place where we're saying that our advocate is not going to be able to create law by way of ordinance and is not going to be able to get rid of a specific law, then the next best thing that that person can do is a total review. And I think this is maybe what Kevin was talking about, a total review of all existing ordinances, and then a review of every ordinance that comes across to see how it affects the subject matter that we are so interested in, and then to go to the council and say, this is what, let's take established ordinances. This is what this ordinance does or doesn't do that it needs to do, that it does bad or it doesn't do what it needs to do. And this ordinance needs to be repealed. At the same time, the advocate has a weekly or county weekly or monthly bulletin that gets shared with the public widely that says, these are my repeal suggestions, and these are the reasons why I'm suggesting it be repealed. Please contact your councilman and support the idea of this repeal, or support the idea of this ordinance coming on board, or this amendment to this present ordinance. It's one or the other, and if they can't create the law themselves, they have to. The person has to have the oomph to get out and organize the public to come in and tell the council what to do. But first, go directly to the council and say, hey guys or gals or people, this is what needs to happen. So I think that person has to have, at a minimum, that authority.
Other thoughts? I actually was looking at, like, not just putting the environmental resources division under this person, but I wanted to also put some other areas under the person. So yes, I see the person having responsibility, to put forth some legislative proposals, but I also envisioned the person as a manager. Is that something that other people have thought about?
Can you say more, Anne Marie?
Well, for instance, I'm not exactly sure if you can take the shoreline master plan out of the planning department, if that's where it sits, because it's such a key component for sea level rise. I'm not sure. I've heard a couple different people talk about creating incentives for people to not cut trees, but maybe they get some kind of a tax incentive to plant trees, to keep older trees on their property. Maybe there's an area where we're doing some work with the shoreline, and we're encouraging people to get some kind of an incentive for protecting eelgrass and some other areas like that. Ocean acidification, areas like that are out there that we need to be involved in, the whole waste stream, and solid waste, clean water, all the recycling. So those were just, those. And then I wasn't sure on the transportation side. I mean, I want to see these things happen with the fleet. I can't stand that it's 19 years and the fleet is not kind of moving forward, our vehicles, and the same with our buildings. I mean, last week, Erica talked a little bit about, the need to retrofit buildings. And I've heard other people talk about, the department or the different departments looking at creating a campus. Well, one of the things we've learned in the pandemic is we don't all need to be together to work and to communicate with each other. So, the idea of, in 2008, they talked about reducing transportation between the government, and we still have it out there in the 2020 resolution. So I'm just trying to kind of keep your thoughts going. So I see Sharon, I see Bob, and I see Kevin. Sharon,
Bob and Kevin were before me.
I'm sorry. Bob was before you?
That
Okay.
was an old hand up, so my hand
Okay.
isn't up.
Okay.
Way before me.
Okay, Sharon, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, you folks have heard me say, and I'll probably irritate you by saying it again, but I've been doing climate change education for 20 years. and I'm frustrated out of my mind. We have had such a lack of leadership, and so many opportunities have been lost to save money, save lives, bring us into a new millennium and a new century that it just, it's like I just have my spiritual practices that keep me from spontaneously combusting. So we need strong leadership, period. And if we can do it on the county level, good. It'll set an example for other communities. We need it. We've needed it for a long time.
Okay. Okay, Kevin.
Yeah, I think that, and thank you, Madam Chair. I think you, Madam Chair, raised some really important points with regard to the SMP, the shoreline. So the Management Act at the state level gives, actually, the Coastal Zone Management Act at the federal level gives the state authority, and the state passed the Shoreline Management Act, which gives the counties the ability to pass a shoreline master program. So there's consistency all the way up to the federal government on that. And so taking that as an example, I believe, and again, I'm spending a lot of time reading more legal documents than I care to. I believe that the adoption of the shoreline master program at the county level would still lie within the county council, the legislative body. But to your question / comment, Anne-Marie, as far as would this person be a manager, I think the answer is yes. They would have, I think they have to have a department that is focused on this. So it can't just be one person. I think you're going to, we haven't gotten into it, but I could imagine that some of the positions that already exist being consolidated in this area. And actually our current manager of environmental resources, who is also the deputy of public works, even suggested that to us, that one of her dreams would be that there was a consolidation of these different positions under a new department, so they had autonomy. My point, however, is that right now staff prepare a shoreline master program or a critical areas ordinance for adoption by the county council. And while there are numerous hearings and during that process, but particularly before adoption with the county council, for the most part, follows the staff recommendation. It is difficult for the county council to just throw the whole thing out the window or large portions of it. Now, they have in the past, and some of the stuff they've thrown out has been very difficult. And that gets back to the argument of why we want this person to be elected. But if an independently elected official's department was preparing those staff reports, I think that would be very interesting. Or it wouldn't even be a staff report at that point. It would be a draft ordinance and a draft policy and a draft shoreline master program. So their department would develop that and do the work and then give it to the county council for adoption. But if the county council tries to throw it out the window, portions of it, as opposed to what's happened in the past where staff have said, okay, well, that's your prerogative. And they don't really say anything. They're quiet. They say, here's the recommendation. The county council throws it back and forth. If there's an independently elected official representing that plan, they get to tell the council, no, you realize what you're doing, throws out the entire reason for this plan. You know, they can, that's the combination of the political cover pressure side. But I think to your question, Emery, I think they could be a manager as well, or will need to be. And I think they'll have to have, somebody helping them with that maybe, but that some of the roles and tasks that are already assigned to the county might come under this new department.
Sharon, do you have your hand up? Liz has hers. Okay, go ahead, Liz.
And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that they would welcome having things taken off their plate. Right? You think?
Yes, to a degree. I think, and I think we've already heard some of this. I think there's a turfiness too. People want to be in control, particularly once they're elected. They're like, now I got the power, I want to keep it. And the idea that somebody else may take something that's a big sexy topic and run with it, I think is also threatening. That said, as Dick Grout has pointed out very well to us in the past, and I laughed about it because I had to witness it firsthand too many times. It's similar to the state legislature passing a bill and then the governor signing it. I can't tell you how many times I spent 2 or 3 years working on something and the governor spent 10 minutes, but when he signed it, all the press was like, the governor just did blankety blank. And that's what I see this position doing for the county council. They're going to do the work. They're going to be behind the scenes doing the research with their staff, making sure the best, for instance, shoreline master program comes forward that actually addresses climate change, sea level rise, and so on. And then the county council gets to stand up and go, woohoo, we did this. Yeah. With
And that's what I'm pointing to, that relationship they could get excited about, hopefully.
as long as they see it that way. And that's
Yeah.
why I think at first, I think we have one of the biggest hurdles we have is, well, getting the public to understand why this is, well, actually the detail with it. I think the public is there on that we need to do something. They may not see this as the answer to doing something, and that's the educational piece. The other educational piece that we have is to educate the county council members of why this is actually a really positive thing for them. Sorry.
Sharon, your hand is up. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say I do think that at least some of the county council will need the education. And I also want to say that if climate change is now a sexy topic, I'm just floored because, man, it has not been a sexy topic the last. I guess it's gotten sexier over the years.
Okay. Where are we going from here? We have, okay, we got Dick and we've got Kyle and we've got Bob.
I think there's there's a homework assignment here. That are we at a point where maybe we need to, everybody kind of take all of this and chew it over and come up with, and what I would like to see is people put their ideas in writing and send them out well before the next meeting. I'm not saying we necessarily cut off discussion, but I'm just thinking ahead to where do we go with this? That people think hard about what we're talking about and how would you do this, and put your ideas in writing and share them with the rest of us. Because I mean, we've got almost another hour, but whether we'll get there today or not, I don't know. And I would like to see, I think we've gotten copies of some of this stuff previously, but to save us, or at least me, having to dig for it, Bob's 2 different proposals, those 2 resolutions that you referred to, Anne Marie, anything else anybody has in writing, and let's all agree to read all of that stuff before the next meeting.
Can I add to your list the Hawaii, since Kevin, you've referenced that many times. If we're going to get these things together, that might be another great piece to have in that collection.
Actually, Bill Apple gave us the link to that, and it's on our original sheet about, that piece, but I can
that's
send it to you again.
I like Dick's suggestion of if we could get a single email that had like 6 resources for us to collectively review, that would be really helpful. And I think Dick gave us a good starting point on that list. And I was just simply asking if we could add the Hawaii one to that specific list so that they're all together. We all know where the documents are and what we're agreeing to review.
Bob and then Sharon.
I have 2 points. The first is it worthwhile for us to make one last run at the possibility of having some legislative authority? To ask, I realize where this will probably end up, but to ask the ever conservative Randy Gaylord to tell us if there is any way that he knows of or can dream of for us to carve out the legislative authority that our council now has to deal with these issues, to carve it out and give it to this person. I'm going, do we want to just run that by him? And if we don't, or if we do, and he says no, and I think, that's probable, then we're left with a person who will have a different job that won't involve legislating directly, but ought to involve very strongly how we do legislate. Now, what I will do is I'm going to take the various suggestions. Boy, there were some good ones here that I hadn't put in my proposal, like the for lack of a better word, community organizing aspect of it is very important. And also, let's see, there was a second one. The review of budget actions that was suggested also. To put those things, not the review of the budget, I meant, to put those things in the second proposal that I have.
Okay.
So I'll amend that just a bit, and then I will indeed send out the first proposal and the second proposal as requested, and those can be, food for some thought anyway.
Okay, Kevin, why don't you go ahead since you're going to leave us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bob, specific to your point, I am by no means done with the idea of this person having authority to do legislation. We may be shot down on that. I've had a thing that I've believed for a long time, which is never ask a question you don't want the answer to. And so I do not want to ask for a full legal opinion on a question until I know how to ask that question to help define the answer, to be very frank. And so the research I'm doing and the conversations I'm having with people like Dennis McLaren, who was the, counsel for the town of Port Townsend before he became the Region 10 EPA administrator under Obama. People like that who, and his entire career has been working on environmental justice issues. So I'm asking some others kind of what their thoughts are on not necessarily just legislation, but how could we strengthen this position? What are the tools we can use within our, bucket of tools here? And how do we access those? And so once I get more of that information, and hopefully we have some presentations before this subcommittee answering some of that, then I think we start to define the position, and then we go to Randy and say, here's our ideas. What do you think? But I want to do a lot more research before. It's one of the reasons why I've been hesitant with other subcommittees to just start randomly firing off questions to Randy. It's like, let's really think through what our goal is, how we want to get there. And once we define a specific set of tasks, then we can say, okay, we need a legal opinion on these three of them.
Okay, so taking that, what is your time frame on that piece, Kevin?
I'm waiting for others who are all doing pro bono kind of I've cashed in a lot of friendship chips, and I'm wondering how many more I have, frankly. And so these are all extremely busy people, most of them lawyers in different firms already doing incredible work elsewhere. And so this is not their top priority. They're fielding some questions from me in their spare time, literally. And so I wish I could tell you by next week. I just emailed a couple of the people I've talked to again this morning saying, hey, can we get together? I'm hoping for a phone call this week. And Anne-Marie, I will bring you in on some of those as well. But I don't know. I will say that if we don't have answers to some of these questions in the next, say, 3 weeks, we're going to have to move forward without them.
And is there any opportunity for us to use any of the budget that you've just recently procured to work on this?
Actually, yes. It's one of the things that we put in that budget was that we wanted it to be not just for the drafting of our recommendations, but for more research. And so I'm hoping that I can get some of this just pro bono, and then that we can bounce those questions or ideas raised from those individuals off of Randy. But if we need to consult professionally with some of these folks, I think we could.
Okay.
And I think it would be an appropriate use of the funds based on how we explained the budget that we needed, the budget rationale to the county council when they approved it.
Well, and it also overlaps at least two committees, I think, in some ways, so.
Yeah.
Dick, you had something you wanted to say, and then
I've
Sharon?
had my hand up for quite a while.
Okay,
just
Sharon, why don't you go then? Go ahead.
Thank you. I was also going to ask about a timeline because I'm kind of feeling like I want to move on this, and I know that we have to be patient to some degree on it. I wonder if there are other people we could consult with that might have more time. I wonder if we could start, I mean, yes, if we could get an email with all of those links to the documents to review, that would be wonderful. I'd love to do that. And then I wonder if we can't really start working on the document, have it, shared on the screen and start working it together. Just maybe start with one of Bob's documents and go from there.
So we also had a recommendation from Dick to put all of our ideas individually together, and then you could actually collate that, but I'll just put that out there. Dick, do you want to go, and then Kyle?
Yeah, I just want to say I support what Kevin just proposed doing, but I am 99% sure we cannot give legislative authority to this position. And I say that because, as Kevin pointed out earlier, under the state constitution, counties are subdivisions of state government, and the state delegates directly to county councils and county commissions the authority to legislate. So I think there's essentially zero chance that this position could legislate. But I think the research Kevin wants to do is worth doing, because there may be an avenue there I don't know about, but I'm quite skeptical about it. And then just to what you just said, Sharon, I will run screaming from the room if we put a document up on the screen and start editing it as a group. I want no part of that. I've been involved in that a couple of times. I think it's awful.
Okay, Kyle, go ahead.
I got cold feet now after Dick's comment. As we've been talking, I've been working on an Excel spreadsheet. I'll just read. So the columns are, and I don't have to share this. I have a quick proposal of questions, proposals or concepts, authorities of, responsibilities of, direct relationships with, indirect, funding mechanisms, unforeseen or unintended consequences, spheres of influence, resources, current constraints in law, and current allowances in law. It's just a thought document. It could go in Teams in our folder. Anyone could populate it there or change it. Sharon's going to send me an early copy of the notes. I'll re-listen to today and clean this up, and I'll post it there if people would, if that helps make use of just a place to keep track of.
And where are we getting this? Where do we get it?
Well, we can sort that out. I would put it in our folder in Teams, because once you access it there, if you make any changes or additions, it's just captured. You don't have to resave. You don't have to attach it as an email. I know people have that extra layer with Teams, but I won't, much like Dick will run from the room, having it be a moving, open Word or Excel document that goes around as an attachment email, it's going to get really clunky.
Okay, so maybe on the top of it, you could tell us how to get it.
Sure. Get to it. I can do that I'll do that in the chat for starters, and then I'll.
Okay.
Is that useful? I mean, is that a?
Well, I don't know how to get into the folders, I don't think. Okay. But maybe everybody else does, and I'm just an outlier. It's okay. A lot of people are shaking their heads that they don't know how to get into the folders.
Is it that, or is it that it's not useful, or both?
Oh no, I think it'd be very useful.
Okay.
I'm not sure it would be useful, but I'm also just, adamantly opposed to Microsoft because they make things more confusing than they need to be. But well, I have to admit, Kyle, I have not looked at any of our folders. I read everything on my emails, but if stuff solely goes to a folder and isn't copied to me elsewhere, I'm not looking at it. And maybe I need to change that, but I think I've been reading quite a few different documents, so I'm getting them somehow.
Okay. So Sharon.
We've had a request if we could take public comment, and I'm just wondering if we should take public comment before Kevin leaves the meeting.
Sure. and we can move new business down. That's fine. Are we in agreement? We'll go ahead and do that now. Okay, I see heads shaking. Okay, so Henning, would you like to say anything?
Well, listening to you folks is very encouraging to me. I'm here because I'm particularly interested in the impacts that agriculture makes to ecology and especially to climate change. I'm mindful of the fact that agriculture contributes at least 10% climate changing emissions. So it's very serious. And I noticed in the list that Anne-Marie gave of the areas of concern, agriculture and food were not included. Maybe that was just an unintentional omission, but I just wanted to point out how important the question of what we eat and how we source foods and what systems of food production we support, how important that is to the whole question of mitigating climate change. You know, Wendell Berry famously said that eating is an agricultural act, but I would say eating is also an ecological act. And so what we put in our mouths every day has everything to do with the climate and the changing climate. So that's one thing. I just want to make sure that agriculture and a local food system and changes that we might make on the local level to bring about a system that is more benign in terms of climate change. I would hope that that topic is also front and center in your deliberations. And then I heard a question about examples for environmental advocacy, either nationally or internationally. And what immediately comes to my mind is that Northern Europe in general has made much more progress along those lines. And if we were going to look to a community comparable to Washington State, we, for instance, could look at Denmark, where you have very active and very successful environmental advocacy on all levels of society, from the corporate to the government, to NGOs, to community organizations. And I'm just mindful of the fact that, well, two things. One is that Denmark today is a net exporter of clean energy, energy that is not reliant on fossil fuels. And also that they have a much higher standards of public health because their food is produced locally. So I think that you could go, for instance, to Denmark, however you slice a particular cake, and get many examples of this kind of thing can be done and has been done. And only the third thing I want to say is that all those countries I'm referencing now as a group, Northern Europe, have secretaries or ministers of the environment who have this, you know, these are cabinet levels positions in national governments, but also in regional governments and in communities. And they have input on a par with a secretary of economics or finance and what have you. Their position has to be taken seriously in making policies on all levels of government. So I think that there are plenty of examples that we can look to if we want to look beyond our narrow horizons. Those are really two things I'd like to say at this
That's
point.
great, Henny. And I also, you know, would put soil in there as well as
very
an
much so.
issue with the food and the ag. No,
Yeah.
I in my mind, I do have ag in there, and I also have forestry in there.
Yeah.
But I probably just didn't include it in my list.
I just didn't hear it.
No, that's, you know, I didn't
Yeah.
want to, I don't want to overburden people with my list. Alejandra.
Thank you. Three things. One is it's hard to, as a member of the public, to participate fully and give you the benefit of our wisdom out here if we don't have access to the communications that you're all studying and referring to in between meetings. And I don't know if that's part of the public record or if that's appropriate to share with the public, but it would sure be helpful to be able to look at the things that you're looking at that we can't see. Second item is, I have what I think is a brilliant idea, which is where the cover needs to come from for this position is the charter itself. If we can create the mandate that managing the environment for however we talk about it, that's a separate topic. If that mandate is in the charter, that all of county government is responsible to make this happen, that the county council is responsible for managing climate change and managing environmental protection, then a position can be created that assists the county council in carrying out that mandate. But the cover itself is not provided by the position or the person in the position. The cover is provided by the charter itself. That we can take it out. I'm hoping that we can take it out of the political process, and so that the county council isn't sitting there going, having to be responsive to the sway of the current popular whoever speaks the loudest in a public meeting for something this important does not seem appropriate anymore. And obviously that's why it hasn't happened, is because the emergency of the moment doesn't allow for enough time and attention and budget to be devoted to something that's important. So that's my first thought. Second thought is, I agree with Henning, and I listened to the recording of your meeting last week and noticed that Erica's presentation on climate change left a really incomplete picture of what climate change is and how it happens. And when we focus on climate change by only attempting to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, we're missing the underlying understanding of the whole picture. The human impact on the climate is the result of human disruption anywhere in the natural carbon cycle. And the natural carbon cycle is managed by microorganisms, fungi, and invertebrates in the living soil,
Right.
communities of living plants holding the soil in place, depositing their dead parts onto the ground that then feed those microorganisms and little creatures, hold the carbon in the ground, together managing the water cycle, converting energy from the sun and the nutrients from the soil into a form that can be used by the microorganisms inside of animals, including humans, that animals, including us, only get the full benefit of those nutrients because they're digested by the microorganisms in our digestive systems. The microorganisms are then redeposited into the soil as animal feces. That's the cycle. When we kill the microorganisms anywhere in the cycle, in our own bodies or in the soil or in the animals, by killing the plants, by removing the dead plants and their dead parts from the ground, by killing the animals that help redistribute the plants and their seeds, by removing the stored carbon from the ground in the form that we now burn, in fossil fuels, by disturbing the other stored minerals, by mining, so that they become toxic to life, by creating and redistributing the toxic substances anywhere in the ecosystem, including inside human bodies, and then removing the deposition of animal feces back into the ground. Any of these things results in climate change. And by focusing only on, gosh, how are we going to make our buildings more efficient and how are we going to drive around better, misses so much of what's contributing here to climate change. So it just seems like people don't get this. They don't understand how it works, how the whole cycle works and how magnificent nature is at managing this cycle. And what, to Liz's point, we just can't keep living the way we're living in total ignorance and denial of how we're disrupting the natural system. And so I just wanted to say that to help us think more holistically about the whole system and what needs to change. Thank you for listening. I can't hear you, Anne-Marie.
I said thank you. That was very insightful. Bob, it looks like you would like to say something.
First of all, once we get this position there established and everything, Alexander is going to need a good campaign manager. So be thinking about that. All right. So my second comment has to do with making these rights mandatory, which is what Alexander was talking about to a certain degree. In the Bill of Rights for the United States Constitution, there's an instance after instance after instance of the language that says Congress shall make no law that abridges this freedom or does this or that. And I, for one, our committee is going to be working on the Bill of Rights. I'm going to be an advocate of language that says the legislative body for this county shall make no ordinance which abridges this right, and which abridges this right or that right or that right or that right after the right has been established. Because we don't just then throw out a feathery right. We command what we want our servants, the council, to do, and that's what that Bill of Rights needs to do. And to the extent that I have anything to do with it, that's what it's going to say.
Did
All right.
anyone else have another comment before we move to new business? Okay, so what I heard, just to wrap this session up, is that we're going to do some homework. We're all going to kind of put some of our thoughts on paper in terms of what we think the proposals should look like or what the position should look like. We're going to probably assume that we may, I could see where some of our positions would be including the legislative piece. And if we can't have the legislative piece, how do we go about getting as close as we can to that? Bob's going to send out his proposals. Kyle's going to get us a spreadsheet. I'm going to get the resolutions and the Honolulu. And I will also look to Denmark and some of the northern countries to see what exactly they have out there that we can, hijack. Anybody else that has other ideas, that's really good. And if there's nothing else, Bob, do you have your hand up again? No, you're okay. Okay. Liz has her hand up. Okay. And
So
then Kyle.
There just was a request and a second to the request, and I think a third to the request for a single email with a series of links. Is that something that we're going to get, or is somebody going to provide that?
Well, I'm not, I think if Bob could send his own material and Kyle could send, if you could deal with 3 emails, all of them with the headline climate and environment, that might be the best way to do it. Because otherwise you're asking me to compile all of this stuff. And it would take me a while probably to figure out how to compile what Kyle sends and how to get it all to you. But
Okay,
for the record, and I want Alejandro to know that all of these things should and will be in our charter review agenda minutes documents. For instance, Sharon not only did the minutes last week, but she had attached to the minutes Erica's document, which I sent to everybody. So if you went into the agenda and the minutes, you would get both of those documents. Okay. Now, moving on to new business. Sharon, you had an item for us. Oh, I'm sorry, Kyle. You wanted to say something?
I want to ask the group a question, and it could be new business. I'm willing to do a really quick share my screen tutorial to get into Teams, just to show it once. If visual learners, and I can wait till the end.
Okay, that'd be good. Okay, why don't we go with new business from Sharon, and then we'll come back to Kyle.
Yeah, this is maybe inappropriate because it's not specific to the, I feel an urge to mention that there is a call for supporting a couple of pieces of legislature in the state legislature, which is in the second half of its session now, that could really impact us in our county. And that legislation is the HEAL Act and the Washington Strong Act. And I can put an email some information on who it would be good to contact regarding these 2 bills, because they speak to what we are trying to do. At least the Washington Strong Act does in a big way. And it brings it, because it's all about climate change, equity, green jobs, stuff that can really support what we want to do here in the county. So I'd like to just send
Sure,
out
that would be helpful.
Okay.
Okay. At that point, do we want to go to a little screen share with Kyle, and then we would adjourn? Yes, Liz.
I just want to address Alexander's point. There is a big delay in the posting of minutes. Your minutes from the last week are not posted on the county website.
That's not true, because yesterday I made sure Catherine had them, and she sent me a note that said they are posted on the website. So
Okay.
I don't know when she last looked for those, and I can't control that.
Okay.
Catherine only works a certain amount of time for us. So
Okay.
I think she tries to get the stuff up as fast as she can. Yes, Sharon.
The
Okay.
other thing is that we generally, we take minutes and then we approve them at the next meeting, and then they go up. So there is
Yeah, I haven't really thought it was necessary for us to approve minutes, because it's there's a recording of everything that was done. And these are really, I consider these more our notes,
Okay.
Yes, Bob.
Thank you. I just wanted to address, her concern. So thank you.
Okay. Yes, Bob.
Anne Marie, when you send things over to Catherine, do you also send them to Olivia? Because if you don't,
No.
you should. Here's
Okay.
why. Catherine gets swamped and Olivia picks up the slack. Almost
Okay.
everything that I send over to the two of them, Olivia ends up posting, and she
Okay.
does things right away. So
Okay.
try that.
Okay, for good. Thank you. Hopefully that'll help. Okay. Kyle, train me.
Okay, no pressure. All right, so I'm going to share, hopefully, my main screen. And I want to know if everyone can see the county, our CRC email page, my version of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully that looks familiar to everybody, and it's where everyone already finds, has worked out how to get to your email. Can you see the cursor also? Okay. In this little upper left corner, this matrix of boxes, if you pull that down, these are all the other applications that by being a member of the CRC you have access to. So I'm not 100% sure how it works if you have a Mac, but Teams is one of these, and there are many, many ones in here. Our calendar is in here. You can use direct access to Excel, Word, PowerPoint, so forth. Teams is one of those. If you click on Teams, and that application opens up, it takes a second. Because I'm on the Board of Health and use my county email for another county function, I have two team choices here. I think most of you only have one. So I'm going to open Charter Review here and move over everyone's screen. And if you have two screens, you could try this with me. And I'll put these instructions in writing and send them in an email. And I'm happy to do this for anyone at any point. Under Files, so 3 steps: here to Teams, then to your CRC, Charter Review, and then to Files. Under Files are the folders I keep talking about of all the various committee work. Climate and Environment is one of those. And I just put this ideas matrix Excel spreadsheet into our folder. And so if you open that, while any of us are in Teams and working, anything that you add or subtract here is live. And so you can add ideas, you can add columns if you wanted, you can, I probably prefer that we don't subtract right away. But I'm curious if that's useful to people. If it's not, I'm going to use it and try. I'm going to keep doing what I said with Sharon's notes and re-listening to the recording just to try and capture. But if we can capture everyone's thoughts, I think this can be a steering document down the road for making the bridges that Bob was talking about with the Bill of Rights. And
Okay. Yeah, I think it looks really valuable. Liz, you wanted to say something?
Kyle, I think for me, it's a matter of, I can't commit to or answer it whether it'd be helpful or not, but I will commit to, using it to discover how helpful it is or not. So
And
thank you.
And it's not my job, but I'm happy to, if there's another way to do this that's more usable, or a place to host it that's easier. I do feel like, and I'm happy to keep doing the email attachment thing. It's getting more and more clunky to go try and mine my inbox, and I have some work to do for organizing folders. I know, but I think Liz, you mentioned this elsewhere, to be able to kind of collect our thoughts and be able to draw from a single illustrative place is going to be helpful. And it's helpful now, but a month from now, it's going to be more so.
Okay, Bob, you have a question?
No, I just want to say, I never want to be on a committee that Kyle is not on.
Yes, Tom.
I have a continual question about using my Word file, my personal Word file. I noticed Kyle clicked on that upper left matrix and Word became an option. Does that mean it'll go to my file that I've generated in my computer, or is this some new Word file that's just into Teams?
If you access, so I just did that for us, and it's showing, just as an example, some of the last work that I did. I should be able to, might have to spend a second doing that. I think that you can load anything. Are you on a laptop or a desktop? Or
Yeah, it's a Windows laptop.
You should be able to access any of your current files.
Okay.
And I'll spend a second today and look into that and confirm that that's true.
Yeah, because I particularly on my other subcommittee, I've been trying to send information that I have in my Word file, and I've had to send those to Tony Gazelle's private email to get it to work, and then he takes it and puts it in to Outlook email, and so I've been kind of stymied. So thank you.
Well, certainly if from now forward you generate any new Word documents in this accessing Word this way, you should be able to share those directly with any or all of us.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'll help you try and find your old stuff that's saved.
Any other questions? I think that looks good. Okay. Does anybody have any other comments before we adjourn? Yes, Liz.
I just wanted to back up. Sometimes in our, who's speaking next, threads kind of get dropped. So I wanted to back up to what Sharon was saying about, putting out something in terms of legislation that affects the work that we would be able to do in the future.
Mhm.
And Sharon, I just want to say, for me, thank you. I appreciate when you send that, and I do act on it. So if you wanted feedback, if that's what you're looking for, that's my feedback. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anything else? Are we good? Yes, Kyle.
Is someone gonna designate it to speak to the big group this afternoon if there's time to call for our topic areas? Is that you,
Well,
Madam
I
Chair?
usually do it. Was there something that you wanted to talk about?
Nothing else, nothing
I
additional.
would probably just tell them who we had speak at the last meetings and then what we did today, kind of a generic what we did today. Does that
Great.
sound?
Mhm.
I mean, they want us to be short and sweet. And the idea, as I understood it, is people can read our minutes or our notes. Does that sound about right to everybody? Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none. Yes, Kyle?
Sorry.
That's okay.
Do we have a schedule of our next sets of speakers?
Well, I'm going to get back with Kevin because he was going to be talking with this Cascadia group. And I think all three of the people he mentioned today are partners in that group or have a role in that group. And are there other people we would like to hear from?
Well, for my part, I know there've been a couple of references to, kind of hearing from Randy, but waiting until we have some distinct some carved things that we want to have evaluated. It does make sense in my mind to set some soft dates in April or May so that we can be thinking about and giving ourselves some loose deadlines to be able to, continue to move forward. I know some committees are doing more of that. Bob's an excellent cracker of the whip for process, and it has helped. So.
Yes, Henning.
I have a practical question. I'm here partly because of the invitation on behalf of Liz Lafferty, who said, as a member of Transition Lopez, I should be here. And also, I'm here also as a private long-term resident of Lopez Island and as a farmer. So I have an interest in what you're talking about, and I did find your conversation today very useful and very stimulating. So I'd like to be part of it in the future. It was very difficult for me this morning to find out how to find you. So I finally did succeed. I actually wrote an email to Liz that she didn't answer. I thought it was the end of my rope and couldn't find the link, but I did find it finally.
Okay.
Is there a way that you could inform me of your meetings on a regular basis and send me a link so I don't have to be so desperate?
Yes, Liz.
Hitting that link that you got stays the same every time. So
But I don't know what that is.
So it was the link that you got here today.
I know, but how do I know what
He
that
doesn't.
is? I'm not sure I can find it the next time.
Oh, okay.
I went through 20 doors until I finally stumbled on it and said, oh, there it is.
Okay. So
If there's an invitation with a link, that makes it the easiest for an old fox like me, who's new to all this. And, I succeed if I'm really tough.
right.
But
Yeah. And we don't want it to be that hard. So
yeah,
Kyle, is there a simple answer? Like the link I have is our link. And are they one and the same? Does it matter if? No, okay. So then I can, and Alexandria, do you have a simple way you've managed it?
Yeah, you just go to the sanjuanco.com, type into the search bar Charter Review Commission, and then on that page, there's a link next to every committee as to how to get to the meeting. There's a Zoom meeting link. Yesterday, I had some trouble with getting into a different committee, but finally managed. But if you click on the current agenda for some of the groups, the meeting link is right in there. And I think it was in there for this group today as well. So that's where the link is.
Or Henning, I could just read it to you right now. You could write it down.
No, I can email it, Henning, to you.
Okay.
okay, thank you.
Seemed like a simple
But-
solution.
So I do wonder, I want to check with the other commissioners. Is there any reason I shouldn't just go out on Lopez Rocks and post the committee meetings with the link in there and just populate it through the next 3 months going forward?
We want public
Right.
comment.
Okay. So then I'll go out on Lopez Rocks and put in some of the subcommittees and their links to get on, their times that they meet. And then, so Henning, any point in the future, if you can't find what you've had in the past, you'll be able to go out to Lopez Rocks, go to their calendar, see the event, and the link will be there.
So when is the next meeting? These are just
We meet every Wednesday
every Wednesday, right?
from 10 to noon.
Okay, good. So then I'll go to Lopez Rocks and find out how to get there.
Yeah, the Zoom
Yes.
link will be in there.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you very much.
So Kyle, I just want to circle back to what you raised about soft dates. And are you specifically thinking, okay, you'd like to see a date when we want to be going to the Charter Review Commission with our plan? And or what are you thinking about with soft dates?
It's really the will of the group, but
Sure.
This group has some good traction, I think, about what we're focused on.
Mhm.
And there are a lot more nuts and bolts, I think, to make this palatable to for the electorate. But at some point, I don't know that we ever need to be fully done on hearing from other top other focus groups or other people. But when are we going to, I think we will need to hear from somebody like Randy at some point. And I just think it makes sense to have an idea of when that is, so we continue.
Well,
we
I think
package the
what
work.
I understood was that Kevin intends to send questions to Randy at certain points. And I think he may have already sent one or two, but it's not supposed to be, you know, we wouldn't have him come to each subcommittee or committee to speak, because we're asking him for legal opinions. That's what my interpretation of it was. So I don't know. I would imagine that we would be in a packet of questions, but maybe it will be a question that goes separate. And what I heard Kevin say today is he's talking to this Cascadia group, many of whom have served in leadership roles in the EPA, Washington EPA, and also one gentleman was the lawyer for Port Townsend and was a Region 10, maybe EPA administrator in the Obama administration. So he's reaching out to them. I thought he was saying maybe 3 weeks we'd be looking at this. So my thought was we just keep moving along. We carve out, if we have certain, whenever we have a proposal that has a legislative carve out in it, we need to also have a, if that doesn't work, how do we do that piece?
That's perfect.
So it's like
Two.
plan A, plan B, there may be a plan C.
Perfect.
Yes, Liz.
And I also thought what Kevin said in terms of strategically is not to ask questions prematurely.
Right.
We don't want to ask questions we don't want answers to. So I thought strategically that
Right.
would be an element
Yes.
in there.
So at the next meeting, I would see it as being similar to this, only the difference would be that we will have fine-tuned our own thoughts, just like Bob is putting together his kind of proposal. Every one of us would have some type of a proposal that we would be sketching out. And it doesn't, nobody's saying it has to be this detailed or anything like that, but that each of us would have taken the time to do the homework and say, what do I want to see? You know, what does Kyle want to see? What does Liz want to see? And then in the meantime, we're also going to be looking at the document that Kyle has created for us, which has some of our thoughts from today, and moving ourselves across that, maybe adding to it. And as he was saying, we're not going to subtract things. We're just going to add to it. And there may be some other legal questions that we come up with that also have to go into the authority category. Okay, does that sound reasonable? And Alejandra, I'll be right there. I just need to hear from these folks real quickly. Yes.
Good.
Bob's okay.
Excellent.
Sharon, you look like you're gonna kill me. Too much homework? No, okay, okay. All right. Alejandra, you wanted to say something.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Kyle, is there a way for the public to access that Teams thing with the folders?
I don't think so. And there has been a conversation about duplicating to the county website, which it's our responsibility. Doesn't mean we're doing a perfect job of it. So we're still learning how to invoke the help of our limited staff to populate that.
And it's really just a working document for us to keep track of what we have said and what we're looking at. And kind of, so we're not forgetting, oh, we had this question. That's how I'm understanding it. And kind of to keep our discussion kind of moving forward. Does that sound right, Kyle?
I think so. Is there something specific, Alexandra, that you'd like to stay up on?
I learned so much, and my own thinking evolves, you know, as I watch these meetings and listen to people's perspectives, and I want to be prepared for the meeting so I can be effective. And, you know, so if I'm always a week behind, then it makes it hard to do that.
I appreciate that. I don't know how to, I mean, the whole week delay with approving minutes, and I don't think all the committees have sorted that out even. But there is a responsibility in, I don't know how they did it. I don't know. I mean, Tom could talk about it. I don't know how you did it when you traveled on the ferry 10 years ago and did all of that with all of the other logistics. So we're way ahead and still behind.
So we're going to make sure our notes not only go to Catherine, but they also go to Olivia and see if
Right.
that helps. Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
But
Jen?
I'm still going to send you the notes first, and then
Right.
you're going to send them on, right?
And I'm
Okay.
going to forward them on.
I have a question. I've been kind of taking notes, and also, I compare those down to minutes. Today, I kind of kept it more minutes-like, but it's still kind of notesy. So give me any feedback. If this is considered minutes, great. If this is considered notes and you want a pared down version for minutes, just let me know and I'll provide that too.
Is everybody okay with us having notes, given that we have a recording?
Sometimes it's easier to refer back to notes rather than to watch a whole recording.
Yes, that's what I would think. Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, you want to go over them though.
Okay. All good? Shall we adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
And Anne Marie, can you stop the recording?
Just a second.